Will the clerk do roll call?
President Epling,
Here.
Vice Chair Donato, Mr. Martin. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. Mr. Martin is excused. He's absent. Mr. Piper?
Here.
Mr. St. Clair?
Here.
Mr. Steele?
Here.
Mr. Stepp?
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Did everybody look at the minutes from April 20th? And are there any suggestions? Okay, well,
Make a motion, we approve the minutes.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Are there any changes to the agenda? Oh, sorry. If anybody's going to talk tonight, we need to swear you in. So even if you might talk, please stand up. Do you swear or affirm that any statement you give this evening will be true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are not.
Okay.
And remember to have your mics on when you're speaking, please.
All right, well, case one, BZA 23-8 Dunlop Holdings LLC on 4000 Parkway Lane. And take it away, John.
Thank you. So this is the site, formerly Sports Imports was in here, so the proposal is to include in this building, which will have office and some retail components, but also for indoor commercial recreation, mostly lacrosse and soccer and speed training and weight training and that type of thing. And so the Planning Commission forwarded a positive recommendation on a conditional use to council. Council will hear it at their next meeting. But in the meantime, there's a variance application needed related to the parking. So we'll go through that. This just shows you that. Go around the site here. Come on. So this is the floor plan, so you can see on the left, it's the office area. That has been revised. So you can see in the purple is office. On the left side there, there's a retail portion immediately adjacent to that. There'll be kind of their storage area in that middle portion. And then you see weight training, speed training, and the lacrosse training. So the reason for the variance is when you look at the square footage of those two areas for the training and the building code, the requirement is for like 100, or not the requirement, but the maximum occupancy is 169 persons. And when you have that maximum number, the code required parking is 1 space per 3 persons in the maximum occupancy. That would be 69 spaces. There's 29, possibly if you get a couple of double stacked, the way they do for employees, you could get 30 cars in there. But it's not realistic in terms of the numbers. So, because one of the conditions of the approval was that a maximum of 40 persons be permitted in the training area. And if you do the parking calculations based on that, it's only 27 spaces required. You have a table in your staff report. So for the office space, it's 5 people, or 5 parking spaces rather for the retail portion, another 5 spaces, the warehouse portion, 2.5 spaces. And then with a maximum of 40 people in the occupancy occupying those training areas, the parking requirement would be 14. So that's a total of 27. They have that on site. So as long as those numbers are kept to, they would meet the code requirement for parking. Now, as you know, depending on use, a lot of the way that they will operate will determine that parking need. And as if they need to space out some of the training times, they can do that so that there's not cars parked in for one time and then the following group coming in comes in while the first group is still in there. They can adjust that. So there's some things that we will look at if it starts to be problematic in terms of the through movement of traffic on the public streets. We may have to reconsider some things, but based on the description in their operations, we think that this will work fine, and this is just a variance to allow basically them to operate with that maximum number of people that they're committed to, instead of the maximum number that would be allowed just because the space is so big, based on the building code. So that's the, staff finds that the use should not substantially alter the character of the area nor impact governmental services. Staff finds that the proposed use meets the conditional use criteria of the code and will incorporate conditions that provide further limitations. Based on these findings, staff finds that the proposed intensity of the use demonstrates appropriateness for existing parking resources and recommends approval of the proposed parking variance with the 3 conditions listed. Do you have questions about any of those items?
So how is the occupancy going to be monitored? I mean, I understand at bars and restaurants, I mean, there's an occupancy placard up there, and the fire marshal can come in and say, wait a minute, you know, how's this going to be monitored?
Well, I don't know that we have to monitor the inside as much, but there'll be a limitation. Where it's going to manifest stuff for us is if there becomes a full parking lot and cars backing out into the public street trying to get in. That's what we care about the most in this site. So like I was saying, they're operationally, they can limit that and cause it, so that's not a problem. But if we start seeing cars that are parked out on the street and kids jumping out to go get training, and that causes problems with through movement of traffic on Parkway Lane or Lyman Drive, we will know that. We will hear complaints. If we see it, then we will have to have a discussion with them on how to limit that. But are we going to go in the building every so often and spot check if there's 41 people in there or 28 people? No. But because if nobody notices, then it's not a problem, right? If there's no notice that there's a problem in that parking lot, just like you would for a restaurant or a business in Old Hilliard, if there's not a problem, then there won't be any notification that way. But if there is, we will have to work with the applicant on some possibilities. We've talked about a number of those types of things that can happen. They've submitted a schedule they think will work. If that schedule ends up being problematic in terms of the way people are arriving and leaving, we can work with them on adjusting that. But we think this should work because of the limits on who's coming to this and the nature of it. It's not going to be recreation games. There's not going to be scrimmages. There's no games here. It's just training. And so you're not going to have spectators. It's just, you might have a parent who comes in and watches. But there's going to be lacrosse balls flying around in that warehouse portion. You're not going to have spectators in there. And so it's self-limiting in most cases. So we think that it'll work. And if we have to make some adjustments, we think there's room to do that on the site.
Well, condition 3 kind of settles all that anyway, doesn't it?
Yes.
Terminates this.
Yes, they're committing to operate in a manner that will achieve that. And like I said, if it becomes problematic, we're going to have to deal with it. We hope no one notices and that this is smooth and it's fine. The previous use, we didn't really have any problems. There were some times when they had some shipments that came in there, made it tight in the parking lot, but nothing that spilled out into the public right of way. So granted, this is off of Cemetery a little bit, but Lyman Drive is, in the peak hours, can be tough. Parkway Lane, because it has a traffic signal, and at the south end of Parkway Lane, there's some heavy truck businesses down there, so we do not want that to be problematic. So, and the applicant has a vested interest in not putting people in tough spots that way as well. So we think we can work it out so that it won't be problematic.
Are you allowed to park on Parkway Lane? Is that a no parking area?
You're not allowed to park. I don't know if it's signed no parking, but there's not enough room to park on there. If it comes to that, that's always a possibility. You can just put a no stopping or parking sign on there. But we haven't had, there's occasionally, not associated with necessarily with this business, but occasionally you'll find a landscape company that parks their truck on, somewhere along Parkway Lane, and people have to squeeze by, and usually it's farther down where the industrial businesses are. At certain times of the day, that would be troublesome here, but because they have a limited number of youth that they'll be training here at a time, it shouldn't be a problem.
The first of the three conditions refers to more conditions that have been set forth by the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council.
Yeah, they were recommended by the commission to council. That'll be heard at the next council meeting. But we think that with those conditions, that this can be a harmonious part of the district.
Have those conditions been set forth yet?
Not by council, but the applicant agreed to them at the planning commission and feels that they can work with that. They can address that. But we had a lengthy discussion about what those numbers should be. And the reason it's 40, and they may not have that many people in there, but 40, a maximum occupancy of 40 will enable the site to meet the parking requirement per code. That's where that number comes from. And when you have commercial recreation facilities, the parking requirement counts on a fair amount of carpooling, or if you've got siblings, they're all playing on the same team, that kind of stuff when you come to practice. So we think a lot of that will happen. But this would allow it, when you look at it, if the number in the building code said that the maximum occupancy was 40 for that space, we wouldn't be here, because it would demonstrate that it meets the code requirement. But just the way they're going to use that space, you're not going to be able to fit that many people in there while you're doing the training that they're doing.
Is there a requirement in the condition or the conditions that planning and zoning approved that the maximum capacity is 40?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the staff report lists the planning commission conditions above the board, the ones that we're recommending tonight. So those are related to the conditional use, these are related to the parking variance. But you're right, they reference the approval of the conditions that were recommended by the commission.
Any other questions for staff? Would the applicant like to speak? State your name and address, please. Sure. Okay.
So the gym that I attend, I can go anytime they're open. I mean, so you got a training area, weight training area? Is this all personal training, or is it you just come when you want to come and train?
State your name, please.
Right here.
The year, they're not coming in. I think that's kind of the question, right? How do we know?
Yeah, is it by appointment, or you have a schedule?
Training schedule. So, yeah, so the kids would, like, let's say that Anthony's a face-off specialist, it's a part of the game. that is like, that he's one of the best at in the world. So we would have a schedule set up where maybe 10 kids would come in and train with him specifically on one part of the field, so. Sorry, yeah.
No, I think you nailed it.
But, so, do you have any concerns that people will decide that, well, I can't get a space, so I'll park at Sheetz, or I'll park at Tim Hortons, or I'll park at Wendy's, and I'll just walk over and,
We don't believe so. When we talked about the 40 persons maximum occupancy, if you look at the training that we would do and with our kids and anybody in that space, you know, for you to have more than 20 people in each section is kind of how we work through that math. And then obviously with what was available with the parking, that you would, yeah, we don't think that's going to be an issue. We don't plan on that being an issue.
And the schedule, so we submitted a schedule with alternating times, gaps in there to allow for transition time periods where we don't anticipate that being an issue. Also, you know, to John's point, you know, the majority of what we're going to have is going to be carpooling. These are primarily going to be athletes that are current members of our program. We already have their contact information. They have a scheduled slot. You know, we're going to encourage carpooling and really parents dropping the kids off and then going across the street to the grocery store or, you know, supporting all the other stuff in the area. You know, I think, you know, we were laughing saying Tim Hortons and Wendy's would probably love us, bringing over a bunch of high school kids and middle school kids and after training. So, you know, we have a lot of control over the flow of that, and we're very confident that when we set this up and structure it accordingly, that will be a high priority for us, really the number one priority, to make sure that we're following the rules, guidelines, and meeting the needs of everything put forward.
thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you very much. Do I have a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the variance, case number BZA 23-8, Dunlap Holding. Code section 112703 to reduce the required number of off-street parking spaces with the 3 variances listed.
With the 3 conditions listed?
I'll second that. Oh, go ahead.
And call the vote.
Mr. Stepp?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. St. Clair?
Yes,
Mr. Piper?
Yes.
Vice President Donahue, or Donato? And President Epling?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay. Good luck.
Sorry if you had to meet just for us, but we appreciate it.
Are there any communications from the staff? Okay. I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay.